New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Don't you just love that? You just love that whole music, the whole idea of positively inspiring and this Saturday Science of Mind lecture series. Good morning. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. And today we are going to be inspired by Chapter 16 in the Science of Mind textbook, The Principles of Successful Living. Chapter 16, The Principles of Successful Living, and it begins on page 266 of the textbook. If you're following along or if you want to pull out your textbook on Kindle or in whatever form you have, Principles of Successful Living. So as I was thinking about that, the principles of successful living, I thought, okay, well, when have you felt successful? When have I felt in my life that I was successful? And there were several different images that came up immediately in my mind. I mean, imagine this: having a job you love, driving a car that your company is paying for, making more money than you really had imagined you would ever make, liking your boss. I mean, like in all the aspects of life, having great relationships and hobbies I loved as well. Picture yourself like that, and you think, now that's successful. And it was. So when I remember in my mind's eye being in a place in my life where all of that was true and I was happy, I don't necessarily crave that kind of success. Maybe it's because I've been there and done that. I was not unhappy, so I'm not one of the people who's going to say, I had all of the worldly trappings and I still felt like there was more or something's missing. I didn't really feel anything was missing. I reshaped my life in a different direction by choice, but not because I felt broken or angry or incomplete. Right. It was just a progression for me. I wanted to do something different. And as I designed something different, I designed it with less of a view toward what others or the world or the media was packaging as success, and a little bit more of going within and saying, what is going to feel like my greatest success at this stage of my life? Think back to when you were maybe below the age of 10, maybe 7 or 8. A lot of people think 8 years old is a pivotal year, like between 7 and 9. That period is a really pivotal year that for many of us, that's the age where if we could go back and truly remember what was important to us in that kind of age range, that is our intuitive knowing of what will make us happiest, most fulfilled, etc. Or it reveals our true personality, etc. And we just, kind of package it differently. And when I go back to around 8 years old, I don't remember much about that period. Definitely not a lot about who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. But I do remember that I was 7 or 8 when I had my first death experience, what many people call a near-death experience. But I do remember. And what happened from that was me being very clear that my parents were people on their own journey, doing the best they could, but ultimately I am responsible for my life, what I do, who I become, etc. And so I think back and it's like that was the true definition for me and the guidance I needed. That's talked about in this chapter in the textbook, Principles of Successful Living. Because a big part of the Principles of Successful Living requires us to take responsibility for our own life and to live our lives in alignment with spiritual law. It doesn't mean that we should have certain material things or we should achieve certain humanly defined goals by a certain age in our lives, although I'm sure many of you, like me, along the way have set these milestone markers. Like I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was like, oh, I know I'll be successful if I've bought a home before the age of 30. And sure enough, I bought a home and built a new home and moved into it when I was 29. Go figure. But it was more because I set the goal and then I went to achieve it that I was successful. I had the same sense of success when I decided that I wanted, excuse me, I wanted to find a group or an organization in my community where I could bring my human resources, skills, and backgrounds to people who were trying to get employed, who had been homeless or unemployed for a long time. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to help them be successful. And I started asking around and I found a program that no longer exists, but at that time was called Restart. And it catered to people who were getting back into the job market, provided them with housing and food and childcare, and gave them classes in budgeting and self-esteem building and leadership and job search and career management. And I volunteered with that program for, I think, about 5 years. And I felt the same sense of success, even though it was tied to giving and not receiving, even though it was tied to the way I was being in the world, not what I was building, like in the form of a house or my career. So I just want to set the stage for everything that we talk about and everything I share with you for the next 30, 40 minutes. Because if we start understanding the principles of successful living, we have to start by understanding and clarifying what we mean by success. Not success based on an external or media-driven standard, but success that represents that which is deep in the core of you, seeking to expand, evolve, and be the example of spirit in the world. So let's dive in. Let's dive in chapter 16, the principles of success. And remember, as I share some of these principles and quotations and all of that, be thinking of your questions. You can drop comments or your own examples in the chat, or you can hold on to questions, and a couple times I'll stop and say, all right, what you got? What are you thinking? What is it that you want me to talk a little bit more about? So I'll do that kind of at the end of each section. And we also will have some time near the end for any questions or comments you want to share. So please use the chat. So in the beginning of chapter 16, this chapter is divided into 5 sections. And the first section is not something for nothing. Not something for nothing. So success doesn't mean that you are going to get something for nothing, right? Or that you can just, mentally think of something and voila, it appears. So it's not that you get something for nothing. And I love this quote that comes up really, really like in the very first paragraph. Ernest Holmes says that science of mind is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Neither does it promise something for nothing. Science of mind is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Neither does it promise something for nothing. He goes on to say it does, however, promise the one who will comply with its teachings that she shall be able to bring greater possibilities and happier conditions into the experience. So we don't teach you can get whatever you want. We don't teach that you can get whatever you want, however you want it, whenever you want it. That's not really what we teach. We teach that you can influence conditions through the power of mental thought. We teach that what you focus on, you actually can influence the environment and bring about, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. We teach a lot of things about using the power of your thought and your conviction and your behavior to send a consistent message into universal law of the kinds of things you want to experience, or even more, the way you want to feel in life, so the universe can provide people, relationships, experiences that will give you that feeling that represents the spiritual law or principle that you are in alignment with. Now, I know I just said a lot right there, but that's really what successful living is. So Ernest Holmes has already reminded us in the quote you already saw that science of mind is not about get rich quick or do things quick or fast or it's magic. That's not what we teach. We teach that what you focus on, what you choose consciously, and what you live in alignment with the way the law works anyway, then you will receive that. So if I wanted, let's say, I'll use the example I used earlier. When I decided that it was time for me to give back and to take all that I had learned about, human resources and leadership and working in the world and help people who maybe had not been exposed to that kind of information or knowledge before, I could have said for a long time, I want to give back. I will feel so good when I give back, or when I teach people how to get a job and keep it. And I could sit in my house, or every morning in my meditation, I could say, how do I teach people? And especially before the days of the internet, where I couldn't just sit in my house and then create a podcast and broadcast it to the world, I still had to recognize my deep desire had to be brought into alignment with physical experience. So I had to find the people. I had to go out and do something. And I had to be clear that I didn't want anything in return. This was about me expressing my talents and me feeling successful, not as an exchange. I will do this for you as long as you adore me, admire me, praise me, tell other people about me. That's what I'm going to get out of it. No. Right? Even though there is a law of reciprocity, and by me putting good into the world, good is going to come into my world. But what I'm talking about is being clear that I wanted to work in alignment with spiritual law, knowing that there are people who need what I have to give, and it is my gift to give it. It is a blessing for me to give it. And in order to give it, I have got to find the right vehicle, the right program, the right place to provide this skill, this talent, this information that I have. And to be doing it from a place of honest sharing, authentic giving. Not, I'm giving it in order to get something in return. So yeah, I had to go out, and I asked a lot of people, and I did research, and I went to the library, and I did what I needed to do to answer the questions, but always from the place of, this is in service to me being in service to the world. This is in service to me giving, sharing, and demonstrating love and compassion, not to get anything in return. So the chapter goes on to say on the next page, on page 267, near the top, the next quote that I want you to see and begin to think about is, no man can demonstrate peace and cling to unhappiness. So working with the law, I can't say I want to be happy, but I cling to being unhappy. I talk about what's not working. I talk about all the things that happened, that I didn't like in my life. I talk about all of the people who make my life difficult, but I say I want to be happy. Okay. I said I wanted to be in service to our community, and I wanted to help people learn how to apply for a job, write a resume, get a job, keep a job, like the values and the way you show up that allows you to keep your job. I couldn't say that I wanted to be in service to the community, especially in that way. And then every day look around and focus on all the people who are unemployed and say they're so lazy and anybody can get a job if they want it. No, I had to say, wow, there are people who want jobs and I can help them do that. That's where I had to put my energy. I'm sure there were people who were unemployed who maybe were unsheltered and had been for 3 years or 8 years and were unemployed. But I don't know if that's what they wanted. I wanted to work, if they wanted a job and they wanted to build skills and they had some background that they wanted, that they felt was good in the workplace, I was willing to help them. Right. So I couldn't focus on helping those people who want jobs and focus my attention on all the people who don't have jobs. And I'm sure they're too lazy, or I'm sure they couldn't do a good job or keep a job more than 30 days, even if they wanted to. Right. We can't have competing focus points, because where we spend our energy and have our most emotion attached to it, that is what the universal mind is going to feed in terms of energy, resources, and experiences and relationships. So the quote that we already shared, no man can demonstrate peace and cling to unhappiness. Let me continue reading what Ernest Holmes wrote right after that, because it's one of the places that one of the paragraphs that I love and go to all the time. He goes on to write, he can demonstrate resignation and call it peace, but it will not be peace. No person can jump into the water and remain dry. This is contrary to law and to reason. No person whose entire time is spent in the contemplation of limitation can demonstrate freedom from such limitation. Okay, so I just have to talk about each one of those sentences and invite you to think of in your own life, what examples have you had where you said you wanted one thing, but you kept talking about or focusing on what you didn't want. Okay, so she can demonstrate resignation and call it peace, but it will not be peace. Have you ever done that? I know I have. It's like classic spiritual bypass. Oh, well, that's the way it is. So, I know everything will just be okay in the end. It'll all work out. But I'm not really coming from that place of belief and faith that it will all work out. I'm just trying to avoid my doubt. I'm pretending I don't have doubt. This idea of I can be resigned, or I can demonstrate resignation, and I can call it peace. But peace, right, is that place, peace and joy both, right? They're just such an internal state of being, and they're an absolute, and there's no comparison. So true peace is, I could be in the middle of a hurricane of ideas and responsibilities and missed deadlines and people expecting me to get things done a certain way. And that does describe my life right now. And I can be at peace with I am getting what I can get done. I am doing my best. I know I'm supported by the universe. And my life can look and be pretty chaotic, but I am navigating the chaos from a grounded place of peace. That is not the same as saying, oh, well, there's so much going on and that's, just the way it is. I'm at peace with it. No, I'm not. I mean, right? No. When I'm saying that and my energetic is irritation or disbelief or doubt, I'm not at peace. I'm in resignation, which is a human experience, not a divine one. Next sentence that, again, I'm just reading from the chapter 16, top of page 267. And the next sentence is, no one can jump into the water no one can jump into the water and remain dry. Now, actually, this sentence in the paragraph is my favorite one, even though I chose to highlight no man can demonstrate peace and cling to unhappiness. But this sentence right here, you cannot jump in the water and remain dry, is really my favorite one in this paragraph because it's so visual for me looking at, and in my mind, what I see is I see the swimming pool from the summer camp that I went to from the age of 5 through 16 or 18, because I worked there after high school as well as a counselor. Oh my goodness. So I picture the pool at Camp Daracot in Missouri, in a state park in the state of Missouri. And I remember being really young and stepping really carefully down the stairs, the steps, the 3 or 4 steps in the 3-foot shallow end, and, very timidly. And then I also can picture myself at 12 or 13 bouncing on the diving board, jumping up really high and diving completely in. Not anything fancy, just being excited about being fully in the water and watching the water splash around. You cannot get in the water without getting wet. You cannot stay dry. So if I want to be in the pool of spiritual living, if I want to be in the pool of successful living, then I cannot be over here thinking, I'm going to stay dry. That's really nice over there. Look, it works for Tracy. Yeah. But if I want that, I've got to get wet too. Okay, so I've spent 15 minutes on the first 3 paragraphs of this chapter. That's how powerful this chapter is. But what I want to do over the next 5 or 10 minutes is highlight some of the other quotes, because I really want you to get wet. I want you to realize you can't stay dry and live in the water of spiritual living. You cannot be over here looking at it, thinking about it, hearing Tracy talk about it. So my goal over the next 10 or 15 minutes is to inspire you to read this chapter on your own by sharing a few highlights with you. So in the next section of this chapter, the section is titled, "The Law is Infinite." Now, what does that mean? It means that spiritual law has no boundaries. You'll hear us talk about principle is not bound by precedent, that God, that Spirit is always creating something new. And so in this section, which begins in the middle of page 267, Ernest Holmes reminds us that law, the spiritual law, is infinite, and that there is nothing that binds spirit or blocks spirit or creates a boundary for spirit except our own thinking and our own belief. So on page 268, Ernest Holmes writes, "The law is a law of liberty, but not a law of license." What does that mean? It means that the law is a law of liberty, of liberation, of constant expansion, of growth, of evolution, but living in alignment with the law does not give me a license to do or have any and everything that exists. It is only giving me a license to be able to access, shape, and influence my life and what I contribute into the larger life based on what I believe, and am I behaving in accordance with how spiritual law and physical law actually works. A simpler way to talk about that, you know about the physical law of gravity. If I am picking up this clip that is nearby. I know if I let go of it, the law of gravity is always working. It doesn't work one way for me and a different way for you or someone else. And so I know that if I let go of it, it is going to drop. I didn't throw it. I didn't push it. I just let go of it. The law of gravity is working. So all of the physical laws and all of the spiritual laws are always working. And as I understand them, I can use them and I can align my life with them. And so that's what's going on. The law is infinite, but how it shows up for me and is how it shows up through me, really. Right? How it shows up for me is shows up the same way for everyone, but my life reflects how I use it. Now, here's the other piece about the law. I don't have to make the law do what it does. The law is always working, whether I know it or not, whether I'm in alignment with it or not, whether I understand it or not. And so that is what keeps the world, the universe, operating perfectly. Because as I often say in step 1 of spiritual mind treatment, and I remember that, spirit needs no help from me, right? Spirit is doing what it does. It needs no help from me. Okay. But in reality, I get to use the way the law works. So the next quote that I want to highlight is, it's quite a burden lifted when we realize that we do not have to move the world. It's going to move anyway. I'm not responsible for the entire world. I'm responsible for my experience. I'm responsible for my response to whatever is happening in the world. And I'm the only one who can choose to do that in alignment with love, peace, harmony, joy, beauty, prosperity, abundance, etc., etc. So it's up to me to focus my mental activity and align my physical with it. So the next quote that I'll highlight is from page 269. A mental avenue must be provided through which the law may operate, because it's a law of liberty. This doesn't mean I must please the law. The law is not capricious. The law is not waiting to say, good job, Tracy. Oh, you make me so happy, Tracy. Oh, I'll give you an A plus, Tracy. No, the law is not, I don't have to please the law. It's impersonal. It knows, it doesn't know, and it doesn't care who uses it. But if you use it, it works for you. It works in conjunction with you. It works in alignment with you. Or really, you work in alignment with it. So another quote from this section. We realize, however, that to attempt this self-expression at the expense of society or other individuals is to defeat the very purpose for which freedom exists, because in back of it all is unity. In the creation of humanity, there is unity. So some of you have heard me say before, at a certain level, it's spiritual malpractice when we talk about science of mind as an individual philosophy. It's made for me to create my life and do my life the way I want. Because all of us also simultaneously are contributing to the expression of spiritual truth in all of humanity, and in fact, in all of life. So how we treat the planet, whether we are living green, how we value animals and natural resources, all of that is not about me personally. It is, how do I live in alignment with all that has been created for a world that works for everyone? That's how the world has been created. Am I living in a way that not only demonstrates that, but supports and sustains it? So we don't exist for the purpose of making an impression upon the environment. We exist to express ourselves through this environment. And Ernest Holmes says there is a great difference. Page 270, fourth paragraph. There is a great difference in demanding from the universe, demanding from the environment, or claiming it, or saying we have domain over the environment in a way, and meaning that we have been put here to control it. No, we have domain over our environment, meaning we have choice and we have responsibility. But in back of it all, there is unity. So if any of that interests you, be sure to go read that second section. It's only a couple of pages, 2, 3 pages, 4 pages. And then we go to the third section, demonstrating the law. And let me tell you my favorite quote in this section coming right up. I'm just going to drop it right on you. The possibilities of the law are infinite, and our possibilities of using it are limitless. Page 271 on this in the second chapter. Principle of Successful Living, that's the chapter. The section, demonstrating the law. The possibilities of the law are infinite. There is no boundary. There is no limit. Our possibilities of using it are limitless. But that still doesn't mean we can have any and everything we want, because we can only receive that which we choose, understand, and are convicted to and live in alignment with, right? So the next paragraph, I want to verbally highlight this for you. First sentence is, we can demonstrate at the level of our ability to know. Beyond this, we cannot go. And it rhymes. So it's so easy, right, to remember. I remember the first time I read this and I was like, we can demonstrate at the level of our ability to know. Beyond this, we cannot go. So in demonstrating the law, we've got to have a knowing of how the law works and a commitment to live in alignment with it. Now, I will do a little footnote. Even before I knew how the law worked, right, the law was working, but I was not really consciously demonstrating, right? I was not consciously demonstrating, even though I will demonstrate what I really believe and what I'm convinced. So while this isn't my story, right, there are many people who become addicted to drugs or food or alcohol or shopping or shoplifting, or right, that we become addicted to things that we focus on. And the way the law works is, until we consciously choose something different, that becomes our default choice and we continue to experience it. So the law is working. But what we're talking about is consciously using spiritual law and principles to create a successful life. So another quote from this section on demonstrating the law is, insofar as we are going to make this thing work, it is because we contact universal laws which run through every age and race and which answer every person. Stay with me here. No one group of people has a lock on demonstrating universal law. Anyone of any age, of any racial group, of any nation, of any religion can demonstrate law. The law does demonstrate the law. So don't get caught in the lie that because I know science of mind, I'm superior to that group that believes a certain thing. No, if they're demonstrating the law, if they are in contact with universal spiritual law, if they are in alignment with law, the law is working in, as, and through them. If you find yourself getting caught up in, oh, those poor people, because they don't have what I have, stop it. Stop it. Just stop it. Based on race or age or ethnicity or socioeconomic status. None of that defines whether you are living a spiritually guided and grounded life and whether your life can work for you regardless of human circumstance. Now, I could do a whole 3 hours on that alone, and there's no time for that. So I want to give you one highlight each from sections 4 and sections 5, and then I want to turn to you to see if you have any comments or questions. Section 4 is spirit and mental law. And the quote that I want to share with you is about law, and it begins, "It can do anything for us that we can conceive of it doing." Right? That is a natural follow-on from demonstrating the law, that spiritual and mental law can do anything that we can envision. And way back in the first section, like 5 pages earlier, when Ernest Holmes talks about giving your mental and spiritual coin, investing your mental and spiritual coin, he comes back to that here in section 4, where it can do anything for us that we can conceive of it doing, the power of mental thought. And then in the last section 5, which he has just titled Success and Happiness, really kind of goes back to where I started when I was sharing my story at the beginning. And Ernest Holmes wrote, "Success and happiness are ours when we deal with absoluteness." Success and happiness are ours when we deal with absoluteness. And all that is reminding us that everything in the human design, everything that humanity designs, our laws, our values by society, our customs and our traditions, and how we humanly define success, those are all relative. Those are all relative terms and relative goals, and we can buy into them if they represent or if we are part of that community or that identity group. But let us not be confused. That which is absolute is spirit. It is formless, and it is beyond anything that is humanly possible to design from scratch, but it is very true. And so in this chapter on principles of successful living, Ernest Holmes basically reminds us to be in alignment with the absolute truth of spiritual law of God. Choose God, not choose, don't choose not God. That is the lesson from this amazing chapter. I can hardly believe that I talked about this chapter in 42 minutes, but hopefully it inspires you to go look. So what questions or what comments do you have? There's some great examples that I'm seeing in the chat. And yes, absolutely, you can apply it in your own life. We put our limitations on ourselves. And if we can do that, then let us choose to expand. If I can put limitations on my life, I can also create a picture of freedom. I can create a picture of evolution. I can create a picture of expansion. And that is just as valid as the picture of, that's just as valid to the universe as the picture that I have of limitation. So that is what we teach when we say change your thinking, change your life. We're not saying it's magic. We're saying change the thoughts you focus on. Begin to believe them. The belief in those new thoughts will automatically drive new behavior. That new behavior will repeat itself over and over and over again. And then it becomes a habit. And it is our habitual thinking and doing that creates our experience. If my habitual thinking and believing is I am not enough, I'm not good enough, I can never have that job, I don't know how to do relationships well, I'll never have enough money, our behavior will reflect that. It'll become a habit of not looking for more, not believing in more, and our life will reflect that. If we change that belief, the universe is unlimited and I have access to all that there is that serves me, and I begin to believe that, and I begin to look for and share what I have because I know there's more, and look for all the people who are trying to give me monetary and non-monetary gifts. And then I begin to see that all around me, and I begin to grow my wealth or my health or whatever I'm focusing on. That becomes a habit. And even when I catch a cold, or even when I get an unexpected bill of $5,000 to repair a water heater, my experience of life is one of abundance, supply. That's what I look for. That's what I expect. That, my friends, is successful living. That is what we all have a birthright to. And that is what chapter 16 in the Science of Mind textbook is all about. Oh, I love this, right? Or I'm too old, or I'm liable to make a mistake, or right? All of those messages that we give ourselves in our self-talk reflect what we really believe in. And we are the only ones who can change that belief for ourselves. So read this chapter 16 in the Science of Mind textbook, The Principles of Successful Living. And I strongly recommend you rereading it, even if you, like me, have read it dozens of times before. I strongly recommend you read it this week, because next week, going into chapter 17 on mental equivalence, you want to be grounded and ready to dive in. Chapter 17 on mental equivalence, I have spent as long as 5 weeks in a class just on chapter 17. So what we talked about today is the foundation. All of these chapters in the Science of Mind textbook, using the definitive edition, is the one that we're referring to from 1938. But chapter 16 that we talked about today is such a foundation to go next. So Science of Mind textbook by Ernest Holmes. Please look for the definitive edition if you don't already have it in your library. And again, check out this week's chapter as a way to prepare yourself for next week and mental equivalence. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am so delighted to be part of this team that is bringing you lectures and dialogue about the science of mind on Saturday mornings throughout the year. I'm glad you joined us today, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Bye for now.